I worked there. I'm part of
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians and guests. Welcome to Rotary Club of Pleasanton.
the world's greatest Rotary club.
Thank you. All right. Well, we want to thank our attendance takers, Kathy, Almeida, Julio, Pinky, McCora G. Ricky, thank you for all your technology, and we just couldn't do this without you. So.
Yes, we could. Might as well.
Tom Fox wants to do this. All right, I think Randy, we're going to invite you.
You want me to do the inspiration or
For the, oh, wait, well, the person that's gonna do the inspiration, you wanna fill in for
Yeah.
that or do it
Yeah,
before?
let's do it that
All right, so you're gonna lead us on the plane.
I can do that too.
Please,
Not in front of it, not in front of that.
oh, sorry. Please face the flag and address the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, you may be seated and stop recording, we're going to do week here, inspirational.
This isn't the best timing for this speech after hearing of Queen Elizabeth passing, but it was set up, so I'm gonna go ahead anyway. This is a speech about patriotism. When an American signs up to defend our country, they write a blank check with their lives, payable to our country when duty calls. The Americans in this story are those proud service members being held captive by the enemy, knowing that their captors could, at any moment, cash that check. I would like you to keep this in mind as you listen to my talk. Our national anthem is the greatest national anthem in the world. All other national anthems are about the strength that that particular country wants to portray. Our national anthem is a question from its soldiers imprisoned in the belly of a British warship, hoping that our flag is still waving. It was the War of 1812, just a few short years after the Revolutionary War, and achieving our very own independence from British rule. A lawyer, Francis Scott Key, was sent to Fort McHenry in the Baltimore Harbor to negotiate with the British Vice Admiral Alexander Cochrane aboard the Tonnant. The Vice Admiral gave an order for the fleet of the British naval ships in the harbor to commence firing at Fort McHenry if our flag wasn't taken down immediately and to surrender. Fort McHenry was the last US stronghold remaining. Washington, D.C. had been taken and burned to the ground a month earlier. The newly formed United States needed to withstand this attack. The Vice Admiral wouldn't let Key leave the ship until after the bombardment. At this time, I ask you to stand. Key witnessed the attack, and the remaining prisoners asked from below, "Oh, say, can you see?" The assault continued all night, and they asked, "By the dawn's early light." Americans were proud of their newly formed country. What so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. They knew that it was still flying the previous night as the fleet bombarded the fort. Whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight? They witnessed it over the walls of the fort, the ramparts. The flag withstanding the siege, still waving. or the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. They were able to get a glimpse of the flag when the bombs and the rockets went off and lit up the sky. And the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air. In those moments, they can see from themselves that the flag still waving. Gave proof through the night that our flag was still there, giving the prisoners hope that they still had a country to die for. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? The prisoners couldn't see if it was still standing as dawn came. Or the land of the free and the home of the brave. The last question, do we still have a free country, a home for the brave? You can sit. You can see why this anthem is so powerful. We're not bragging about what our country is or what it can do. We want to know that we still have a flag to fly over our country. For those prisoners, they needed to know they had something left to die for. This is something that must be asked and fought for every day for a free country. Ronald Reagan once said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. There may be some people that you don't like or agree with, but in this country, we are Americans. And in America, there is hope. Again, Ronald Reagan once said something like this: America is the only country in the world that if you immigrate here from Germany, Poland, Russia, Mexico, or any other country in the world, you're an American. No other country can say that. If you immigrate to Mexico, you're not a Mexican. If you go to Germany, you're not German. But in America, you are an American. Francis Scott Key, when he wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, wanted you to consider a question as you hear the anthem. I think that something President Kennedy once said is the perfect question. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask, what can you do for your country? Thank you.
I've been to Fort McHenry. How many people have been to Fort McHenry? Have you held the flag, the enormous flag, and stretched it out with a bunch of people? It's 30 feet tall by 42 feet wide. And I remember going with my young family when many years ago, and we all were holding it. You know, the group on the tour was holding it. It was heavy as could be. It was made out of nylon or something. It wasn't the cloth flag that they had back then, which I can't believe how heavy it would have been. So this thing is enormous and would have shown while it was being shelled all night long. That's how the song Spangled Banner was written by Francis Scott Key. I just wanted to mention that because it was kind of blew me away when we were there and experienced that, how big it was, how heavy it was, and how far away you could see it on board ship when he wrote the song.
I think we should sing it.
What do you want me to do, Gary?
Let's.
Wasn't ready for that, but I will be in a second.
Do we have visiting Rotarians? Any visiting Rotarians? Guests of Rotarians? I see one, my number 4 son, he's really number, he's showing up. Evan Schweigerle from Cal Poly. Thank you. I don't know, well, we have one distinguished guest on it, but we'll introduce him later.
Well, you have Pete McDonald also.
Oh, we have by Zoom. Hi, Pete.
I'm here.
Thanks for showing up. All right. Ricky, how we?
I'm ready now.
All right. Hit it.
Let's stand.
Can you see by the dawn's
Thank you. Hey, all. All right. Julio, did you have any club service announcements? Not today. And then Bill Spirit Run, still running?
Yeah, I don't have much about the
Yep.
Spirit Run. I'd like to announce, with, John Sensiva and his company, Sensiva San Felipe, have agreed to be our title sponsor. So that's great news. Be thankful for that. The sponsorship committee is well underway. We've reached out to a lot of people and we're gonna try to blast past the high bar that Brad set for us last year. Oh, so we'll try our best. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see, we're trying to keep that thing alive. Steve, are you ready? Oh. Presidents of Rotary like to be bribed with gifts from people's travels. They also like cash donations, so be ready to open your wallet for, if you have happy dollars, sad dollars, or you're gonna see how you get fined today.
I feel like I'm being nudged. Yeah, so I just got back from Europe. It was a great vacation. Part of it entailed sailing around the Greek islands. It was really awesome. And so I thought, what can I bring back? And I thought about bringing back some ouzo, but frankly, no one likes ouzo. So I spared you that. So instead, I brought back kind of baklava. So enjoy. And I'm happy to make $100 donation to whichever charity you think is the best. Okay. Thank you very much.
One to eat.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. All right. So that's that. Anybody have any happy dollars or sad dollars that they want to share? So also, as Rotarians, you all know you're supposed to wear a Rotary pin when you're out in public or when you attend the Rotary meeting. So let's be honest, everybody doesn't have their Rotary pin, it's $10.
Whoa.
And you can buy the badge, the pin next week for $5.
I wasn't prepared for this. I didn't know he was gonna spring it on.
You have it. Yeah, where's the bucket? Okay, just. Bag. Oh, I got a bag. So it's honesty.
There's gonna be a lap holding back.
$10 or write a check next week. Thank you. All right. How are we doing?
It used to be $1.
Moving ahead. That's it. It was $5 for 25 years that I know, so we're stepping it up a little bit. All right. Do we have a Rotary International
Yes.
video? Please?
We do.
Rotary knows that providing access to clean water around the world is about more than digging wells. That's why Rotary brings together community leaders, governments, and agencies to plan policies and funding that ensure permanent access to water. Be part of the solution. Learn more.
Part 2 is our student service, youth service.
Every year, over 350,000 young people participate in Rotary's youth programs. And thousands of mentors guide them as they develop their potential and take action in their communities. Service learning is a proven method for activating young people to address the root cause of community issues and hone their leadership skills. And along the way, inspiring them to create lasting change in their communities and themselves, setting them on a path for a lifetime of service. Foster growth in young leaders in your community with Rotary's service learning resources, our new approach to youth service. Resources are now available for both youth program participants and adult advisors. Start your service learning journey now at rotary.org/youth. rotary.org/learn.
We have many people that are familiar with Brightland, participated and gone on it. And then we also used to have the foreign exchange program with students from around the world. That was a lot of fun.
We still have that program.
Yes, well, how good are we doing promoting it?
PNR does a lot.
Okay, so if anybody wants a foreign exchange student, let us know. We'd be glad to put them in your home. For how long is it? 6 months?
I don't know.
Okay, so anyway, that's a great program. We should really resurrect and foster in our club as well. And then I heard at one time there was a program for young professional adults to do an exchange. So anybody want to do that, we'll work on that too. All right. Any other announcements for the good of the order? Got it all together. That's great. All right, Randy, introduction. Honorable.
Thanks, President Gary. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce to you, Jack has been a registered CPA for 22 years. Jack's a licensed real estate broker and works in his family business as a CFO. Jack grew up in the East Bay and received his bachelor's of science degree at Cal Poly in business administration. Jack's been married to his lovely wife, Rita, and has a 14-year-old son, Owen. Jack served on the Parks and Rec and Planning Commission and has been elected to the City Council in 2020. Please help me welcome Jack Balch.
Thank you very much. My first time speaking at Rotary, but I have been offered to come to Rotary or attend meetings many a times. And no, thank you. I respectfully do not need another meeting in my lifestyle. So let me start there. Also, a lot of friendly faces in the room, so I really appreciate the invitation. I'm going to start off by also saying this presentation is by myself only. I'm not representing the city at this time. And that's just because I'm trying to give a flavor that's even. And just so that you know, there's a lot of information on the city's website. So please look at that if you're interested in more. I tried to pick a few things. This is my first paid engagement, so I'm sure the money bag is going around again. Or maybe the check's in the mail. Okay, so sorry. Ricky. It's a little hard, you can't see you on the slide. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so as Randy mentioned, I'm a certified public accountant. I'm a chartered global management accountant. I did accounting publicly with Ernst & Young for approximately 6 years, and then I went to work for my family's business. My grandfather and my dad used to build commercial real estate buildings, warehouses, and we slowly moved out of the construction business, and we do property management of commercial projects, and that's really where I'm at. I grew up in Sunol, down the road, as many know, and I went to Sunol Glen Elementary School, then I went to Mission San Jose High School, and then Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So nice to see some in the room. And if I knew how hard life was, I would have definitely been a 5-year plan. So I was told I had about 20 minutes, so I've got about 60 slides, and we should get through fine. And again, it is on my own, so just so that I'm very clear, I'm not here as a council member in that capacity, so that we're aware of that. So I've been asked this: what the heck is going on, right? What are we doing? And in short, for city council members, which the city of Pleasanton has 4, we are moving from at-large or general elected council members to a district election council members. And I'm sure many of you probably know a vision of what that might entail or what that actually does mean. We've obviously recently gone through it, which will help us. You know, it's familiar to me and all of us because it's recent memory. All of this occurred at the city of Pleasanton, generally between January of this year and March 31st of this year. So if you want to watch any of those meetings, it's all recent to all of us and your city council. It is effective for this election, the November 8th general election. So effective this election, 2 districts per election for the respective council member. Must meet your residency requirements of that district, etc., voter requirements. But I do want to point out that the mayor is still elected at large and is still elected every 2 years, which is similar to how Pleasanton has worked for many times since the mayor became in that type of role. So graphically, to try to illustrate this, it's again not a terribly difficult concept, but graphically, we've gone from our current city. This is how I was elected. I was elected general at large. So we've moved from this, where every 2 years we would elect 2 council members and a mayor, and they would be on your ballot, no matter where you lived in town, to now, oh, Ricky.
I didn't do that.
To Pleasanton skewed to the right.
Let me see if I can turn it.
Do you mind if you, I have it further on too. I have it a little further on, but yeah, the blog graph will help us. Okay, so why are we transitioning? I think everyone here, especially, can understand the concept of not wanting to not represent people in a fair and equal way. If you want to represent people equally, everyone needs their right or opportunity to be represented equally. And so what the assertion was, or what happened is, we received a letter in 21 August from an attorney. I will say the attorney's located in Malibu and probably look Pleasanton up on a map. And they basically asserted that Pleasanton was violating the California Voting Rights Act. And I want to point out that Mr. Shankman's letter, right, said we had polarized voting that may be occurring and threatened litigation based upon that, absent conversion to districts. So roughly speaking, what he is saying is, if we had a concentration of an ethnic group in one section of town, but they were not being able to elect their representative because their vote was diluted out with other geographical voters in that area, then they're not being represented properly and fully. And most of the time, when you think about this, I would like to draw into your mind like a Chinatown or a little Koreatown or a little Italy or something like that, right? Where a group that might have a community of interest itself is not able to elect a representative to reflect them. And that's the assertion. When Pleasanton ultimately went and did its demographic work, we do not have that. People in our community were found to be geographically diverse and spread out. We don't have a concentration of any particular size that would have qualified by that, but we were already so far down the process that we were under order to proceed. We could not retract. I will start there. The other big thing I want to point out is that the California Voting Rights Act is a very hard thing to argue against, because you would theoretically be arguing that you are still representing everyone's vote equally and everyone has the right to vote equally. And so how do you defend against that? The city of Malibu is trying. They are before the California Supreme Court. They have spent approximately $4.7 million was what we were told in legal fees, and have not yet been heard or prevailed. So when you have your city council at the beginning of this year or late of last year looking at COVID still being a challenge with us, and also an assertion that we are disenfranchising voters, and the possibility that we would not prevail being very significant, the council decided to go ahead and proceed to districts. And the bar to argue against that was so high that we just felt as a group that it wasn't worth the public's money to use in that way. Obviously for debate, and many have expressed certain opinions of it since, but there we go. Let's see, did I do my? Okay, so we adopted the resolution to say that we're going to move. We had to complete our work basically by March 19th. The community engagement process was undertaken in early 2022, as I mentioned, so it's all relatively fresh. And we adopted a final district map, which I'll go into in a little bit, basically at the end of March, complying with the time, mid-March, I guess. And again, as I said earlier, it will be for this November election that you will see it. Let's see. So how was a map selected? So in short, kind of going back to my concept that you want everyone to be equally represented, population, not voters, population has to be relatively equal between the districts we would select. Had you had one district with 100,000 people, obviously Pleasanton's 80 people, but if you have one at 100 and one at 50, does the representation of the 50 be greater than the representation of 100,000 people? So we needed our districts to be equal. The other thing that we had to take into consideration are what are called communities of interest. And communities of interest can be based upon a lot of things. Again, a little Italy or a little geographical area where a concentration exists. There's also geographical barriers that can be factored in. We obviously have Hop Yard and Santa Rita and Stone Ridge, which are pretty significant thoroughfares in town, 4-lane roads or 5-lane, in some cases 6-lane. So they can really bifurcate a community pretty quickly. And so a great example is, is one side of Santa Rita really connected to the other side? More goes across Santa Rita, I'm sure you guys know, is more on the sports park side or the west, similar in a community as more on the east. And so communities of interest became a significant talking point in what we did. We also have the arroyos without a lot of ability to traverse them. And that caused us to really factor the arroyos in a lot in ultimate choice and issues that we had to deal with. I'll mention that it's debatable how much each of these should play into the map, right? Because, how much does the arroyo play in versus how much does Stone Ridge play in? A great example of the arroyo, and I just want to keep bringing that up, is West Las Positas travels right next to the arroyo. There's one strip of houses that is basically where the new school district, since Dr. Hagen was here, where the new school district's site will be. So instead of following West Las Positas there, the council chose to jump onto the arroyo as the line. And that way, even though he's separated from the north by West Las Positas, he's still now part of that group or that community of interest versus across the arroyo, which I think makes a great example of the illustration we're dealing with. Yes, it was a lot of maps, and I learned a lot more about Pleasanton from reading our old maps. So I talked about census. So the demographer we hired went through and looked at approximate populations based on census. I thought this was pretty interesting. We have different densities of housing that's coming online, specifically more in our newer housing. It's multifamily. It has a lot higher density. And again, we're not going by voters, we're going by population. So we have to factor that in. And so the other thing that I want to point out here, and I don't know if I put it in my slides, but we have to draw based upon the US Census map, which are called blocks, and they're not very attuned to what you would think a block should look like. They are jagged, they're rigid, they're very different, and so they don't make nice, easy lines. I'll start with that. Okay, so how was a map selected again? I want to point out that 16 base maps were provided by the demographer. Base maps were not his recommendation. Base maps were maps that your council studied to try to determine communities of interest. Things like the geography of the town, of course, the census of the town, population by block group, racial and ethnic density, annexations of land to make Pleasanton grow, as we know when Ruby Hill came online or some of the other areas of town. And then specific plan areas. Homeowner associations were looked at, by the way. If you think you don't live in a homeowner association, unless you live downtown, you do. They're everywhere. And the school district enrollment zones, elementary, high school, etc., which are slightly changing probably, but I'll leave that for another meeting. Beautifully for Pleasanton, and the demographer talked about this, we had 10 maps he provided, but our public provided 8 maps. And that is pretty high. He's done this many a times, and you don't get 8 maps from your public typically. So people went online, they colored, they drew, they used an online mapping tool, but they submitted 8 maps in addition to his professionally drawn 10 maps. And that really showed an engagement that he had not seen before. And if you know Pleasanton, we are an engaged community sometimes. So I thought it was pretty resonant of Pleasanton. Oh, Ricky.
I didn't do that. I didn't.
I apologize. I did this on my Mac and I don't know if it's, do you mind trying to see if we can,
I'm looking to see if I can.
maybe if we edit and stop it. And,
We could all just turn our heads.
yeah. Brad, the other way. Turn your head the other way.
I don't know how to turn it inside of your presentation.
Can we stop presenting and then? see?
Yeah, hang on, let me see if I can.
Perfect.
go
Yeah,
down
yeah.
to the-
And then,
So it's, this one right here?
well, you can go to that one, fine. Oh, yeah, and then just right,
Below is fine.
yeah, you can just go to one way, yeah. Further
This
down.
one or this?
Yeah, they're all 3 the same, so just go to that one, we'll just go that side. Okay, I'm sorry, so I'm gonna go just through what the other 2 slides did. The first of them was the map. People may have heard lime, tangerine, green plan, those were all the 18 maps that we had available. The tangerine map was the one chosen. It is this map, this is the final map. And once the council chose the map, the second action the council had to do was choose the order that the elections would go. And I want to make sure that that's really been aware. The map chosen did end up choosing for each of the 4 sitting council members to be in a different district, naturally, just by the way the map was chosen. Furthermore, 2 of the council members, because Pleasanton's historical system, were already up for re-election. So I'll see if I can use the pointer here. District 1 is where Councilmember Naren lives, and she's turned out and is up for, or her seat, or that seat was up for election naturally. And District 3, where we are located now, is where Councilmember Testa lives, and her she's completing her first term and is up for re-election. So as a result of the map being selected, the particular map, it just resulted in the 4 council members in different spots. And so the west side of town will proceed first, naturally. And I do think that's a logical conclusion. Why would we want to create strife or an area not represented by a council member that actually live there? So for example, to illustrate that, I live in District 4, and if District 4 had gone now, I'm still in my term. I'm mid-term right now. I am not up for re-election. So in theory, District 4 could have me living in it, representing at large, and then a district level council member elected if it had gone this cycle. So I do think it's kind of a bit of hand in glove that we were able to go with the west side of town, with aligning with the 2 council members from that side of town already up in their terms, right? So as I said, you can see the map here. So the 2 maps we didn't see, the first one was to unveil the map or point it out. The second here is to show the order. So again, 1 and 3 are going now this November, and 2 and 4, Councilmember Arkin lives in 2 and I live in 4, will be going in 2024. I put this slide up here because I think people in this room and people who are involved in the community, drive around it, or who have lived here a while can pretty much know where they live on this map. But the city has on their website this tool. You can literally just enter your address. It will zoom in to your street and you can see what district you are in. I will point out we have some challenges. So right here on 2, right, that's a pretty easy line. That is Santa Rita. Here's the freeway 680, and then West Las Positas at the north. Here's where we dip down in the new school district site. So all of the 1 and 2 boundaries and this little section with 3 pretty much do follow a major arterial street or an arroyo or something like that. But people, when you're living in your community, you can identify where that's at pretty easily. We get a little bit more challenging down here in District 3 and 4, and actually this is probably where the council had the most contentious conversations, just to be frank. This is Burnell right here, and then it drops off of Burnell on Independence, which is a residential, non-arterial street. But the problem is this is an entire block on the census blocks I was mentioning earlier. And remember when I was saying they don't lend themselves to natural, easy lines. It's a very weird block when you look on it, because not only is it here, it curves up and grabs all of this area too, which is basically Cottinger, the old Cottinger Park area, or Cottinger Hills. So District 3 and 4 probably have the most difficult line to understand. You start on Burnell, and then you're gonna make a right at the Llamas, as my son says, right? You make a right at the Llamas at the at Independence, and District 4 continues down there. And then District 4 is Bondi Ranch, by the way, if you're thinking of what this development is. This is Bondi. Bondi comes into Cottinger, by the way the blocks work. The other challenge in District 4 versus 2 is this is actually Moore. So Moore, on our northern bound of District 4, Moore is following, and Moore is a residential street, right? But there has to be a line somewhere, I should point out, right? We have to draw a line somewhere. And so Moore, by the nature of it, just became the location. And you can't easily shift or rotate these, because if you do, then you would be disenfranchising by population again, the other district that you're moving towards or away from. And so it became very complex of a geometry game, I guess, with the underlying census data to determine. Okay, let's see what else I got. Oh, that's it. I think that's it. We're in the mix, so please register and vote. Yeah.
Yeah, if I understand things correctly, I will be voting for only one candidate in one election. Is that right?
Yes.
Would you like to disenfranchise the city?
Yeah, let me actually, Jack, if I may clarify that a little bit, or maybe change it. So the question is about disenfranchise. That's actually, I think, one thing I want to point out. So if you live in District 3, or excuse me, 2 or 4 right now, if you live in 2 and 4, the only person on the ballot is the mayor. Currently, our mayor is unchallenged. So this election, your ballot will not technically have any candidates or opponents for you to choose from. You will either check the box for the mayor or not, but there is no challenger, or you could write in. On any of it, but 2 and 4 are only going to have the chance to vote for mayor this election. Now, if you're getting your ballot and you live in 1 and 3, you will have not only the mayor box to choose from, again, the mayor unchallenged, and then a write-in box, and you'll have your council members who are running. So if I may, in District 1, we have Jeff Nybert and Dean Wallace, who have both chosen to run. And in District 3, we have Council Member Testa, as well as Joel Liu and Jamie Yee. So the 3 has probably got the most, 3 candidates running for the seat. And so I will point out that it's transmuting from a at-large seat to now a district seat. So to you, I can't remember where you live, Jack. I think you live right on via the Del Sol, right? Yeah, so you live right next to me. And so you only will have the vote for mayor. Sorry, did that help, Jack?
So I will not get the vote.
You will not be allowed to, unless you want to buy a ballot, but I don't recommend that.
No, you know, something takes so damn much time.
Let me explain EBCE next.
Jack, would you talk about how the districts work with the census, based on the census?
Yeah.
And is there any way that the voting?
The city's only running, I guess I would say, it's dependent on where you live, right? Theoretically, if I can just maybe point out, if the mayor was challenged, right? She's up for re-election, as we know. If the mayor was challenged, that election would be citywide, right? It's just like if you see an election for Alameda County or somewhere else, it all depends on the area you're at. So in your case, Jack, because you and I live in District 4, there's no council member box on your ballot. You will not have that vote this year. You will have it in 24, and that's when you'll have a chance.
Just the one district to vote in?
That's correct. Yeah, you will only have the people who are running for District 4.
Other candidates, well,
You are, in that case, yes. Yeah.
but let's say, using this process, you're elected, you're on the council, you're in District 3. There's an issue you're concerned about in District 4. It's being discussed at the council. You still have the ability to influence what happens in 4 by casting your vote with or against.
Yes. Yes, and
But in some ways, you still have the opportunity to be involved outside.
And we hope that, yes, so to repeat the question or just point out, right? These are duly elected council members. It's just where they're from.
Right.
So your council will still be consisting of 5 people, 4 council members and the mayor. And they will decide the business for the city. And, you know, Lord willing, they will decide for the best of the city overall and not necessarily their district specifically.
So if you are concerned, it would behoove you to know who else is running in the other districts. So
Yes.
you can do
And lend your support or financial support to the candidates in other districts, because while you might not be in their voter group anymore, you are still affected by the policies and procedures that they would implement through ordinance. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Would you explain how the United States Census in 2020 impacts this?
Yeah.
And is there any way that the voting districts can be changed within the 10-year period? And then what happens if Malibu by chance wins their lawsuit?
yeah, so that's a great question, Mr. Hurst. Let me go back to the district. So the census map is what is the basis for this. And again, the census is taken, you know, as everyone knows, every 10 years, and we determine how many people live in your household. From that, the Census Bureau, I guess, I'm thinking Department of Commerce, but the Census Bureau will come up with a block, you know, a building block, and that's the basic level, street by street, how many people live on that street. That becomes the basis for how we choose a map, because we have to have equal representation or try to achieve equal representation so that, you know, you live in District 4, there's 20,000 residents, because we're an 80,000 resident city. And if you live in District 3, it's comprised of 20,000 residents as well. That is our goal. So no, this map is locked in for 10 years because the census telling us the population is not going to be recounted until 10 years from now. Just like we just went through, and as everyone knows, we just went through a redrawing of the maps for our supervisors. We just went through for the school trustees. And so again, the goal is that the number of residents, not voters, is equal through all 4. And we will not know that it's unequal until we retake the census. There's one caveat to that, and I will mention, and this is probably where Mr. Hurst is going, which is annexed land. A good example is this little piece right here. People probably know it as the Merritt property off of Foothill Road. It's the only place that seems like there's one house, but you realize there's like 100 acres all the way to the freeway behind it. So possibly, not saying how I'll vote on that, but it may be annexed into the city in the future. It's clearly not, sorry, going all the way to the end here. I should have done it on. It's clearly not in a district, as you see, because it's not in city boundaries. It's not in the city incorporated area. So when land is brought on, this, or for example, the east side, it will have to be determined by your council at that time that the application is approved, what voting census district, or excuse me, what council district it will be pushed into or aligned with. And there's some variability. There is some variability. We were not able to achieve 20,000 residents in each of these 4. So there is some spread or variance between them, which may lend to where it ultimately is pushed if it comes forward. And that's enough. Yeah.
What happens if Malibu wins their lawsuit?
Oh, so we're locked in. That's actually, if I hinted at it earlier, as we went through the demography and we determined that we do not have a concentration disenfranchising any one particular ethnic group or religious group or something like that, because we are pretty diversified in our population. You know, your neighbor could be of one viewpoint and the next and the next. we thought that our chances of arguing that it was not disenfranchising people were stronger. But by settlement that they would not sue us, we chose to proceed. And so we're locked in. I will also mention that California, because there were so many lawsuits about this, California made a safe harbor. If the city naturally or willingly goes along with it, they will pay up to $30,000 to the attorney who brought the suit or the complaint, but only to that. Damages are capped at $30,000, and that attorney would have to show that they incurred those. Have we not done that or chosen to willingly move to that, we would have obviously then been in a similar situation in Malibu, and the legal costs were not capped. And that was a significant consideration as well. Yeah.
Just to confirm, a council member must live in their district?
Yeah, so residency requirements. So that's actually the newest thing that I think people running this year are looking at. I know several people that are very interested in running and serving our community, but I'm blocking them. They live in my district. So you must live in your district to represent that district. And, you know, with a population of 20,000 people, and by the way, average number of voters in each district is about 8,000. So it's really interesting because you have to be a resident, a voter, and I would hope you have, you know, some resume of service or of, I don't want to say I'm endorsing anyone or not, but just, you know, some resume that you can go with, right? Because in my opinion, Pleasanton has always chosen people that have shown a character that is becoming, and so, you know, we may have people that have never served before on any committee or commission or anywhere in government at all, and are choosing to raise their hand, and frankly, that's okay. It's just not what we've had in the past.
If you want to move, I have an extra bedroom.
I'm in District 4 just fine, thank you. Yeah.
Now that you've been through this process and you did all the studies, you pitched this as if we were acting on a legal press, we had to do this. But take the legal threat away now that you've been through it. Do you think this is the decision you would have supported
No.
anyway?
No.
Why not?
So I grew up down the road. I came to Pleasanton when I was, you know, 5 years old, right? Put ornaments on the Christmas tree on Main Street. You're excluding really qualified people from service because of where they live. Really qualified people that may be able to help us with all the challenges we have. And you are giving other people a chance, there's no doubt. I mean, and so you're broadening that. And I do try to figure out where I'm at overall, but today I feel like we probably haven't done ourselves the best for having the most experienced, the most dedicated. All the candidates now, by the way, I should be very careful to say, they are all, their hearts appear all in it. So I hope Pleasanton can come together and the council can lead together. But what happens when, and here's a perfect example, what happens when an issue comes up in a different district and those are not my voters, right? Those are not your base. And I know for me, because I was elected at large, I'm going to fulfill that promise to the whole city. But I cannot, despite what other council members say, I cannot guarantee that future council members will do that. I cannot guarantee that they won't look at it and say, that's not my voter and I don't care what that side of town thinks. You know, Livermore is slightly ahead of us, as people probably know. And so Livermore is, you know, also challenged with that. So, yeah.
So I appreciate, I put you on the spot as a hard question. I appreciate your candor, respect your answer, and I agree with you. Whatever that.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have to say that I really think that our city is not representing the population. When I look at the city council and I go to my neighborhood, that council does not represent my neighborhood. I just think it's very important that a city council, when they have really a lot of power, Pleasanton is a tremendous job, and I know there's a lot of leadership out there, people who look like me. But I think there's also leadership out there in people who do not look like. And I think this is an opportunity for those people to step forward and you know, have those leadership skills and get buzzing to do what's next for our community. This is perfect opportunity.
Well said, well said.
It's just amazing when you think about downtown and we had Tom Pico or myself or whoever was on the council. And an issue came up and you had to claim financial conflict of interest and not vote on that. So now whoever's in the downtown district, and downtown's a big thing. So there's Julie Tester who lives close to the school district property, not be allowed to vote on the downtown. It's really complicated. And so I'm in real estate 42 years and I was trained, you looked at everybody was green. You weren't brown, you weren't white, black. It's just everybody's gray. And then in 2000, I was involved with the community college and we had to look at the census report and have 7 districts, and Union City had a lot of Hispanic. And it was a question of creating a district for the Hispanic. And I'm like, holy crap, that is just goes against every grain. Everybody's the same, you know, neutral color. And to start, so we're not looking, Pleasanton's diverse, but the school district has the ethnicity components. And, you know, is that even an important thing that you look at districts by ethnicity anymore? So it's really complicated. So thanks for tackling that and bringing us a little more enlightenment.
And if I may say, because you guys were talking earlier, the city of Pleasanton has committee and commission appointments coming up or openings. So if you know anyone who would like to get involved on a committee or commission level, we have like PED, Planning Commission, and some of those openings. The applications are due, I believe it's Monday, the 12th. So just factor that in. And there are quite a lot of openings this cycle. And I truly appreciate everyone's comments. Either way, if you like the districts or not, I do hope to serve all. So my very best. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, somebody tackle it. So we have our opportunity growing. $34. Oh, I know that. All right, and the lucky winner, we have 748 1748 1748. And if you, yeah, all right, well, it's
748.
Yes.
I'm gonna get them out.
hey, Judge.
I had it.
Yeah. Look at what you went good.
Bill. You got a draw.
Bill, if you want a program on scamming, you heard it talked about. The police department.
1756 1756. I think that's Bill again. 756. Come on, 756. 751. That's Bill again. Bill, you. Oh, no, Bob got it. Oh. All right, that concludes our meeting. Everybody have a good weekend.